Welcome back to class number 4 on depression. This is going to be a very personal conversation between me and you. It's a very personal story, what happened. Let me set it up right. When I do my You Just Have to Laugh presentations, this one happened to be on a cruise ship. After the presentation, people gather at the book table, and I have my books there and some other merchandise that I sell. The legendary Naster Blaster. Ever heard of the Naster Blaster? That's a Naster Blaster. Man, you put that in your pocket, social distancing, there's nobody around you. Anytime you're in a line in a queue, do that, it clears the Red Sea, parts your Moses, boom, you're through. That's a joke I make. I'm doing this, people want to know about this. We're laughing at the book table. People come up and tell me stories, all kinds of stories. And while I'm talking to someone, I see a woman standing over here, next to me, and she said, "Excuse me," and I said, "Yes, ma'am." And I didn't scratch my nose at the time, but so I just did it. I'm very spontaneous. And she said, "I'd like to have a word with you." I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she goes, "When my 8-year-old son drowned." "What?" "Yes, my 8-year-old son drowned." I said, "Ma'am, please, let me finish up, take care of these folks. I need to have a private conversation with you. This is very important, of course." And she agreed very graciously. Then she told me what happened. Here's what happened. She said, "We found our 8-year-old son lying face down in a pond. He's still out of pulse. We rushed him to the emergency room. And after they took him to the emergency room, they put him up to ICU, and my husband and I were sitting in the room, and obviously we're very stressed and very concerned, very sad, very scared, everything. So I told my husband, "Look, you stay with him. I'm going to go down and grab some coffee." So she goes down to the cafeteria at the hospital. She's drinking some coffee. She told me, just looking out the window, thinking, trying to put it all together. There's 5 nurses sitting next to her, and they're all sitting around laughing, telling stories, just blowing off steam from the day. And one nurse notices her sitting by herself, and she goes, "Hey, how you doing? Do you have any kids?" And she said, "Yes." She goes, "Well, we're just talking about our kids. How many kids you got?" The woman said, I've got 8. And the nurse said to her, "Man, if I had that many kids, I'd have to drown one of them." "What? She really said that?" She goes, "Oh, yeah, she really said that." She said, "David, have you ever heard that before?" I go, "I've never heard that before." I said, "So what did you do? Did you tell her?" She goes, "Oh, dear God, no, I couldn't tell her. This one was just trying to be funny. She was just trying to make a joke. I couldn't tell her. She had no idea why I was there. But I realized something at that moment, David. God was giving me a gift." And I just said, "Ma'am, I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of people. You're going to have to explain why that would be a gift," that woman saying that. She said, "Come on, David, what are the odds? What are the odds of the situation I'm in and my son is in, and my husband, we're all in, that somebody would say that? If I had that many kids, I'd drown one of them?" Again, she said, "I never heard that story before. I never heard that kind of a line before," she told me. The reason it was a gift from God, because it was so absurd. I had a choice at that moment. I could appreciate the absurdity of the moment, and that sparked a bit of humor in me. Or I could just go deeper in depression, get mad, and cry. And she said, I chose to realize the absurdity of the moment. Then she went on to tell me, she said, "David, my son did die. And you can't believe the amount of sadness and deep grief we had." And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I can't imagine that." She said, "But you know what stopped me from going into deep depression?" "Please." I said, "Tell me." That moment. That moment. Sorry, I get emotional. She said, that moment that she said, if I had that many kids, I'd have to drown one of them. She said, just realizing that moment that she said that and how absurd that was, and it was kind of funny, that's what stops me from diving into the deep depression. Now, everything we have talked about in these classes up to this point is what? Jumping off into the sadness, getting deeper and deeper into the sadness, dwelling on it. As Pat Adams talked about, having it become chronic. Then we get very narrow in our thinking, very rigid, the Dr. Guys talked about, and we have no perspective. That gave her perspective when that woman said that, and all of a sudden that snapped her out of it. And also what happens in that too, what happened in that moment, in the grief and the sadness, is she quit thinking about that and realized that moment. And what did that do? We've talked about this so many times. It rebooted her. Again, it's sad. It's very sad. And when something that horrible happens to any of us, we're going to be sad. Of course we're going to be sad. The secret is not staying there. And that one moment in her thinking, that humorous moment, got to stop the depression. That's it, folks. And I got to tell you, I told you I do presentations on the ship. So I went back and did a presentation on the ship within a week after my dad died. And I was incredibly sad. My mom said, honey, you go. We're going to have the memorial service, but, it's okay. And yeah, I had a great relationship with my pop, so I didn't need to be there. He would understand. Matter of fact, both my mom and dad, he would encourage me, I should say, my mom, to just go out and make him laugh. But it was tough, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. It was tough standing on that stage. And I started to tell a funny story about my dad that happened when he was dying. And I barely could get it out. I could barely, you can understand, even now you can hear my voice crack, barely get it out. And I got it out, and the audience was very nice to me, and very courteous and understanding of it. And afterwards, I'm at that book table again, and a woman called me off to the side. She's from Texas. She's lovely. She goes, David, I am a motivational speaker, David. And like you, when we get up there talking, we're going to get emotional because it's important what we're talking about. But David, we can't cry. We got to get that message out. And here's a little trick I found out, David. When you start crying or get emotional on stage, you clench your butt cheeks as tight as you possibly can, David, because it is impossible to cry and clench at the same time. That's a little handy bit of information, isn't there, folks? You can't cry and clench at the same time. I think I'm going to write a book called that. You can't cry and clench at the same time. It's really true. I'm clenching now. You don't even know what I'm clenching right now. There's the moment. There's the moment. The same thing that happens from going into the abyss of depression and sadness. It's just thinking something funny. Thinking. It's all up here. The way we think leads us to the emotion. And the way we think can get us out of it. We're not denying the emotion. We're not saying it doesn't exist. What we're saying is we make the choice not to stay there. The next episode coming up after this is my friend Scotty. Scotty was in the British Navy. Very unusual story in the British Navy. You're going to meet him. And he witnessed and saw something that happened to one of his friends that fell overboard of the ship that I don't know how anybody could go on after that. And he saw it, and he explained how him and his mates, the guys on the ship, how they went on and how they got through it. They were sad, but they never went into depression and stayed there because of what they did. And when you join us for the next class, you'll find out. Stay amused. Keep laughing. Don't forget to clench. See you at the next class. Thanks for joining us.